I go for refuge in
Sanje
human life
Chudang
and to the
Soje
Buddha,
Chonam
the
La
teaching, and the
Chanju
spiritual
Pado Dane
community.
Tyapso
By
Che
the
Dave
merit
Je
of
So Te
the
Bandeda
teachings, may I
Dola
achieve
Benje
Buddhahood in
Sanje
order to help
Dubara
all living beings.
Sho Sanje
I
Chudang
go for
Soje
refuge in
Chonam La
human life
Chanju
and to
Pado
the Buddha,
Dane
the
Tyap
teaching, and the
Dave
spiritual
Je So Te
community. By
Bandeda
the
Yen
merit
Dola
of
Benje
the
Sanje
teachings, may
Dubara
I achieve
Sho
Buddhahood in order
Sanje
to
Chudang
help all
Soje
living beings.
Chonam La Chanju Pado
I go for refuge in
Dola
human
Benje
life and to the
Sanje
Buddha, the
Dubara
teaching, and the
Sho
spiritual community. By the merit of the teachings, may I achieve Buddhahood in order to help all living beings.
Yeah.
Chatsel, Joshua, Chatsel,
What?
Kiran Chatsel.
I
Guruji.
that I have to.
Not do it today.
Oh, Josh, I forgot my phone. If they call,
Oh,
tell them call your phone. Yes.
well, my phone's disabled.
908-689.
Touch it.
Yeah, if you have a question, I mean, if there's some problem there, call 908-689-6080.
I forgot.
Diana doesn't have her phone.
I forgot it.
I'm just putting on my recorder here. Okay, and also I need my voice. Again, I can.
Bidus. You do your child.
What happened?
Okay, I'm just using my microphone. So, did Doctor the sugar?
Oh, there.
Okay. I haven't. Then, so we'll start with this. We got a couple of questions from Venerable Tarpa, and in verse 201, then Gola, because the Rapche Guba, Rapche Guba Gola,
That did do it. Just what it's Golakare,
Ko Shokdang de.
Devakua. Think of that. Jikuba Kare.
Rapche Guba did Chikche Damba de
Yeah.
231.
Oh, that's it.
231.
Yeah, this one. So, Jet on with it. Cousin Chindos has something. Yeah.
Diana, can you call the pooch? So, verse 201.
This
The,
so, Jet on with it.
all are produced for their effect, thus none are permanent. I've heard a translator say that the underlying word here for permanent can also be translated as eternal, referring to the Tibetan and Sanskrit. Is this the case? And is the word permanent being used in different ways in this text? Sometimes it's permanent in the sense of non-momentary, sometimes as eternal, and sometimes as one of the two extremes. Oh, dude. Ko dapak dunda de hago go de dapa
Oh, they did this one.
dapa de dramandra yo de.
Yeah, got it this one.
Oh, kongi. Because it. Ik train nibala.
Then this one.
De dapa de kandres gogi de dunda de because rapje dinang the dapa gorla getcha mambo yo de yin dunda de dramandra yo de bed.
Did about you? Did this one? This one.
I asked I asked the question simple. Oh, did I read this yet? I think I read it. That's good enough.
I didn't hear you
You want me to read it just in one?
Okay, read it again.
I'll read it again. All are produced for their effect, thus none are permanent. I've heard a translator say that the underlying word here for permanent can also be translated as eternal, referring to the Tibetan and Sanskrit. Is this the case? And is the word permanent being used in different ways in this text, sometimes as permanent in the sense of non-momentary, sometimes as eternal, and sometimes as one of the two extremes? Ko did Rabche Guba Nangla did Dakba did Samsam because Kechik Ma Mayim Badwa Samsam Tanigi Tani Orawa Tanigi Chikde. Then it Samsam Yang eternity de Namyang Shigima de Yang Dunda Sum Yorowa Dunda de because Rabche Gubananga de Dapa de Dunda Dramanda Yorabe.
No, yeah, that is so. Oh, yeah, that is so. That Tamjin David don't give it, you know, Tawi means it, Tagba says, what? Oh, the Chidan Tagba citizen call Kijik and Gura Mebale, Tagba Kura. Tagba Yin said the Kijik Gura Mebale, Koshogara.
So in general, do you understand permanent as being this idea of non-momentary?
Tinia, Tagba Sudi Timber Truba, Rangwine Truba. Oh, Tele Koshogara. Carresina, Rangwine Trubna, Conjura Mebashi, Tabango Trubiora. Did you some cup Gablia, Rangwine Trubalia, Tabas Yungura.
So, but permanent can also mean that it's truly existent or existing from its own side. How's that? Well, it's because if something exists from its own side, then it's non-momentary.
Tak tasigdo tani de tak beta cheta sniora. Ani tak tasna tawasna tangedil sigora. Tak ta kagara. Cheta tandi ta. Cheta. Oh, cheta tawa. Saying good one. So tak tasduzaya rangwine truba dela takbas che. Tendre tawa dela tak tasigdo. Tak tawa. Tak tasdo rangwine truba dela tak ta. Ta rangwine truba dela tak ta. Ta chitam neva dela cheta. Sigdo. Oh. Ti rangwine truba la tak beta sego kares rangwine trubna takpa yurko yora. Yura mega takpa chago yora. Chesa rangwine truba la takpa asche. Ti tawa dela delia tak ta asche. Tendre tawa delia tak ta. Tawas tendre yungdoa.
And then this idea of eternal comes into really the idea when you're talking about the extremes, one of the two extremes. The two extremes can be expressed as eternalism and nihilism. Nihilism means things completely don't exist, but eternalism means that things exist truly. They're truly existent. So then, if they're truly existent, then that's called the extreme of eternalism, also called the extreme of, also called the view of eternalism.
Oh yeah, did do Joshua didn't.
Sorry, view of eternalism. I'm going it now. Yeah.
So you said also the view. You said things exist truly, and the view of permanence.
No, view of eternalism. You know, an eternalistic view. One is an eternalistic view, and one is an eternalistic extreme. That's used for the extreme of eternalism, the view of eternalism, or the eternalistic view, if you want to say.
Tena takbates, dua.
Uh,
Tena takbate rangshinji kyawale takbasigre chara. Temper drubala ya, tempela takbasigre chara. Jesu ji ningbusa, Jesu ba tseni dire se ni yo chune, telesigre sigra. Ene ngobo de temper drube ngobo yoba. Telaya sigyo sigura. Yobas. Mimba ti chirsido. Tak li tangmatele doda. Tak yu mi ti chirse. Takba yoba ma rese, takba tende kudio re sungudwa. Tak yu mi ti chirse de. Reba jagdo de. Yimbe tena takba te esde.
This is clear in the commentary by Gyaltsabje. You can see. If you have the commentary, then in the English it's expressed this way. Therefore, where the line says, "Therefore they are not permanent." Thus, none are permanent. Is here permanent is glossed as meaning inherently produced or truly existent. They do not have an essence able to sustain analysis, is another way, and they do not, and nor do they exist as things in and of themselves. They're just different ways of expressing their intrinsic existence. In the Tibetan, it's a variety of different words that aren't right in front of me, but that's all right. Let's see.
What was that last
This
part?
one.
They do not have an essence able to sustain analysis, or do they have?
Nor do they exist as things in and of themselves.
This one just.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only tagarwa.
Then it nibachik there.
Yeah, only kanda.
Then it dak chik rangwan chen ki dak de korla chik yoide since the question here regarding the permanent unitary independent self, since independent refers to existing from its own side intrinsically, then can only the Prasangika actually refute this notion of the self? How do the other schools define independent here? Dakchi Rawanchenki, Dak de Samsam de Rangwangs and de Kasarangane Drubade, then they did Tengyama Mado Shenda Rangane Drubad Gak Tugirabe. Because Jumta Mawa Shenda Gak Tugirabe.
Oh,
Then they young because Drumta Mawa Shenda de Rangwang Sena de Kandres into Hagogi.
oh, because it's a dose of such. Oh, Taji Rawan Chan says, so Rawan Chan said, Pumbule Tenshamba. Pumbungale, Mo Tadeba, Ramja Tuba Sigua. Oh, Delia, Dili, Taji Rawan Chan said, Telesigora. Oh, the Meba didn't do about that Chidamawada. Simsambada Kanga Hakugiore, Shigiora. Rangwine Meba says on it, the Umatendio Madu, Shake Marwa. Just a call Rawan singing because lame, but Rawan said, could you mangbuyore? Rawan Chiju mangbuyora. Oh, yeah.
Then it thank you the wrong ones and it did Rangwine.
Thank you, Alia. Jenny Rangwine Madruba Asina. Rangwine Meba la Koya Yora. Oh, Tanda did Taji Rawan Changi Dameba said, Kanga took them on Namba Kanga Shagiora. Oh, Dick Resna Rawan Chiriba de Pumbule Tension Beta Delia. Rawan, Ramja to be say, Taji Rawan Changita said. Oh, Dimabital Kogura.
Tachi Rawan Changita.
Because you love it.
We had a similar question yesterday. Here, all the in general, it's the prasangika that understanding this word independent as meaning not existing from its own side, but when all the different tenet systems, including the prasangika, when they're looking at this idea of the non-Buddhists, that the self is permanent, unitary, and independent, they're seeing that the way the non-Buddhists are defining that idea of independence is categorically different. Okay, so categorically different from the aggregates, the body and mind, that they feel that the self is categorically different, and the way that's expressed in the views of in the tenet systems, the Buddhist tenet systems, is that they're holding on to a self that's what do you say, substantially existent in the sense of being self-sufficient.
This one. Oh yeah. That that Rawan Meba said, Pumbuda, Pumbunati, Dani, Mo Tade, Mombu Sebunashi. Oh, Tinder, you said that Rawan chance Gora.
So it's when we're saying about categorically different, it's that an example is that it's like yellow and blue. Okay, that they stand total. Well, that's why I use the word categorically different.
Oh yeah, not the matter. This one. Did this one?
This one.
Oh yeah. No less than as a deal Russian. Rabji Chuva. No, I don't go to Chile.
Oh,
Casity, Dotti.
yeah.
Oh yeah. That is Carso. Dog bed tongue to go to window.
So then we're going to begin the lesson.
Oh yeah. Dog bed draw nam says your subject as you go. Kundu song be said, Kuna Chola Shasa Lo. Oh yeah, I didn't do much. Tongue as you teach them. Dance and you jump in the dolly song with oh, Tenekare. You should look at the baby. Oh, the butcher and Majashi said. Yaba. Oh, yeah, the butcher and Majashi. Give up person so much. Rang is sending also the dinner Sanjit and by oh, she's on Batar Serva. And it the butcher and Majashi said, Lava Sunginanazo. Shooting the lava shake door. Then I make you a chupa, Kawachu to be. Shooting Tabutisha. Oh, they shooting the lava latane. Any Tibachi and Mejawas. Shanat saw Sochaba, Machimba Lambala Soba, Luna, Yesum Dicone, Tigba, Jiam Mejawas, shooting Sonyata Sigdua. So this shooting the lava shake door, Tibachi and Mejashins.
The Buddha has stated in Sutra the following verse: to not engage in wrongdoing, to cultivate virtue completely, to discipline your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. And that first line, to not engage in wrongdoing, is referring to the training in ethical discipline. And this can be understood to be avoiding or abstaining from the 10 non-virtuous deeds, with either physically, verbally, or mentally avoiding any harm. So it can be understood then as avoiding any, as, what do you say, practicing non-violence or non-harm.
Oh yeah, that's shooting the Bachi and Mejashis. 추림기 라바시고라 라바 추림기 라바시 다들 망보 용그래도 메키 주봉기 추림 아니 기수기 추림 개롱기 추림 샤라 장주선배 추림 샤라 상하기 추림 망보 용그라 오 당한서 단다 메키 주봉의 실파 시샤 셰비나 오 아니 디바치암 자신스도 셴기 소주발라 소바 라 마진발렘발라 소바 오 류가 예수님 미교와 주요라 디시에 먹었지 미교와 주부터 아니 송고요라 셴을 내봐 주요라 되게 셴 동해와 주요라 셴 동해와 주래잖아요 까고요라 오 대까고야 전다 가르스는 소소대 랑데 대원들라 동해 메도가데 랑게 하고라 랑게라라 자와요래 랑게라라 잠바요래 대인들서 나 도부마주나 삼 나야부시 주나 삼 대화다 tren드다 동해다 tren드로데 숙천부요라 가라솔이야 어디 가르스데 되게 랑리야 템바다 내버시데 소아디도 용기요데 소소가 하고요서 되게 아니 랑 대원들 동해 면도가 용거라 오 디나시 심진 소아디도 용게 간가 지버레 삼베 삼루티 시송거라 오 셴다가 나시 대완들라 동해 면도바레세 셴라 처제스네 동해 용거레사 펜바제스네 대완 용거레사 삼베 잠바다 제베 삼루 중중지 요하레 디시송네 아니 셴레 처방게요라 소체네 디마레 동해 용거레사 마진발레네 디마레 파제도 동해 용거레사 오 디찬네 수좀 송게요라 셴자 미기 주봉기 수림레시나 잠바다 자와 시송네 용거도 산지기 템바데 닝지랍도 쳐인 베스리 닝지데 잠발 시송네 용거요라 오 디질라다
So this first line, to not engage in wrongdoing, is referring to ethical discipline, the training among the three trainings, the training in ethical discipline. Ethical discipline, the training in ethical discipline can be understood as avoiding the 10 non-virtuous deeds or abstaining from the 10 non-virtuous deeds. Can also be understood as, guarding, observing the vow of a novice or the vow of a bhikshu or bhikshuni, or it can be also understood as observing the bodhisattva vow or observing the tantric vows. But here we're going to talk about it as we're going to understand it as meaning abstaining from the 10 non-virtuous deeds. And the 10 non-virtuous deeds means not to kill and so forth, and not to steal and so forth. But I'm not going to go through the list of the 10 non-virtuous deeds. But what we should understand is that these 10 non-virtuous deeds harm others. They bring harm to others. And so then restraining ourselves from harming others is based on well, first of all, understanding that I want happiness and don't want suffering. This is an understanding that this is something that is based on our feelings, basically our feelings of happiness and pain and suffering, happiness and pleasure and pain and suffering. Because we have those feelings, then we want happiness. We have a strong desire for happiness and a strong desire to avoid suffering. Now, happiness and that desire means that we have love for ourselves. The desire for happiness and everything to go really well it means love, but this is love for oneself, and then also the desire to avoid suffering That's compassion for ourselves. So then, love and compassion for ourselves. Then, when we understand that other beings, we have this kind of love and compassion. It's not. We all have a basic love and compassion there, and then based on this, then we can understand that others have feelings, okay, like ourselves. They feel happiness, they feel pleasure, they feel suffering, they feel pain, and so they're just like me. And then so based on that, then that understanding that they're like me, then we want to avoid harming them. We don't want to bring any harm to them and cause them any pain and suffering, and we want to do what we can to help them. The what do we call it? The maintaining or the observation of ethical discipline, keeping an ethical discipline, is based on love and compassion.
Oh yeah. Oh, this was the castle. Not on that. Garshigresana. Oh, castle. Pajotilia. Rangi Lunga Yusum Yukone. Sawachena Tunga Yungre, some Tungegi, Mayo Yeshe, any ranget saw Meshibashkura. Oh, then saw Jobala Soba Pembachena, Pajotil Tawa Yungre, the other Chekugres, and the Sam Diana. Oh, do you go? Do you know any Pajo Simjak and Digital Devina? Ko Yagaji Yungutuna, oh, Diga, could they want to Yagudu, Pusun Sogadu, some Kawa Comiata, or Digas and the other Travaya, some Chambesim Yungura. Any Pajo de Tuburish Tonsone, or Kotungendo, Tungeda China Counthouse, Mandibari subject Tungeda Chandu Lokigura. Or the Indians, Sawapang, Shanlian, Never Pangure, Chambesam Coricity. Jalandavchi, Modernavchi, Jalasashim, Chosurish, Yabuyana, Oding, Yabuchita with Yabu, the China Drigman, never sungu, the Yabuchita with Yabu, some Tim Nangshimarwa. So I did which younger something, the each and somebody Kudwa. Or the Yunani Namjunepa, Kavatashane, Simgentosul, Tewatungi, Geshe, Rangi, Sawapayata, perpetuating Mangi Yungara. Any Baruji Simjet Tamje, don't have the trend, you say. Simjet Tamje, the other trend, you say, you want to give her. Oh, the kitchen, but Manjan education, you receive the kitchen, but oh, a teacher.
So when we understand that what we can do will when we understand that what we do can bring harm to others, then we avoid doing those actions that are harmful to others. And then when we understand that then we avoid doing the 10 non-virtuous deeds because they would bring harm to others. Then, and that's the practice of compassion. Also, we understand that if we save their life and do the opposite of the 10 non-virtues, the 10 virtues, then we understand that will make them happy, and therefore we have a feeling of love for others. These kinds of feelings are based upon understanding that they have this experience of feelings. It's not like when you're protecting and guarding something you feel precious that has no feelings, like say a watch. Okay, it's not like that at all, because you understand that they're like you and that they have these feelings. So,
뭐야, 다 된다. 득배 진양 매자신이스도 셴라 채와 진양 매자신이스기도 와. 된다 가르 삼교르스네. 셴 동에 규진양 매자신이스기도 와.
So when you hear this line, to not engage in wrongdoing, means that not to do any harm to others, and then and so that's what you're understanding is that that I don't want to inflict the feeling of pain and suffering on anyone. That's what you're restraining yourself from.
Oh yeah, 다 교화 표준 소버제 세대기 디식도 아까서래. 단단하게 추림질라 봐라. 되니 띵생질라 봐서요라. 교화 표준 소버제 세대도 다 단단하게 띵인지 고민이 들어서라. 뽕 섬대 기차와서라도 좋아나. lokpa tösam 기차와서. lokpa tö바다 삼바체 예 지라. 되니야 냠베던다도 고 공자야 되라. 뽕 섬대 기차와서도.
뽕 섬대.
자와 지나 rab도 좋아데. 내가 니요라. 찍대 추트 삼로당 된대지야더라. lokpa tösam 기차와서도. 되니 tö 삼베던다데 양내 양도야 공부해야 되려. 뽕 섬대 기차와서도. 띵지 고메트스요라. 디고 니바디 띵지 공부해야. 시요라. 디바제 메샤시. 교화 표준 소버제스. 디가르 공부르세나. 베나 심젠리 잠베셈 공부. 띵지. 닝지셈 공부. 당뇨지셈 공부. 다 간거 예쇼라. 디고 심젠리리야. 베나가죠. 대화단 채나 동해단 채나 선배서 충주시단도 여러와 수진라바 겁셔인바. 어디인데 다 심젠리리야. 라운드 년대여나. 랑 남균 롱디 제세테다고 콘도다 지카가 요에 년가 요라. 잠불리 샹달이 연계시네 콜케가서 콘도다 지 차와지 요마르와 용마르와. 어디인데 랑 년대리 요바 테솔이야. 레레레레네 잠베셈 공고요라. 심지에 능미득지네 능미지기질 파게 말을 잠바고 마게 팔을 참 부구솔이 잠바고 랑게 사자이네 지지 잠바고 거라. 디대와다 잡아치기 랑위네 고 동해 용주고 매삼 델레 차방게 펜바주고 삼베 잠바고 거라. 디심제 찍을 거네 니바텔라고 테네 숨바텔라고 테네 랑게 추솔이 용게지 미레레레라고 디네 랑게 야연이 용게 정발라고 디네 파지로 디네 파타시네 뉴욕에 용게 심제 가르치 버려. 롱버센달에 용게 심제 지버려. 다 남게 태케베 심제 강가 지버려 섬네. 대화다 채나서 동해에 tren드기 저어디 봐 계고요라. 디지나.
The next line is the verse in the verse is to cultivate virtue completely. Here is referring to the training among the three trainings, the training in meditative stabilization, and there are two activities that a monastic undergoes. One is the activity of study. That means to hear and to reflect upon the teaching, to study and reflect upon the teachings. The other one is what's that? In different translations, but to the meditation that abandon, basically putting what you heard in studying into practice, and so that is this idea of meditative stabilization. So, in order to abandon certain, it's understood defilements and so forth. So then, here, in the context of the training in ethics, we have some understanding of Well, first of all, meditative stabilization can be meditating on many different things. It can be meditating on love, compassion, and so forth. But here we have some understanding of love and compassion in the context of our practice of ethical discipline. So then, at this point, when we're practicing meditative stabilization, or the training in meditative stabilization, then we're talking about extending or expanding our love and compassion. So then the way we do that is through this practice of meditating on love and compassion, and you don't start with somebody who's somewhere on another planet. You can't really, generate any love and compassion towards them. You have to start with those who are just very nearby you, who you feel close to. So then it would be, for your own, what do you say, immediate family members. I guess we call it the immediate family, right? So then, it's your parents and your children and your spouses and partners. You start your practice of love and compassion, expanding that to those who are nearby you. And then once you have, towards your immediate family, you could extend it to those people that you have a close connection to, and it might be your Dharma, Dharma friends, and the members of your Dharma group and so forth, and then maybe your neighbors, and then spread it from your neighbors to your community, and community to those within your state, and then within your country, and then within neighboring countries, and then until it encompasses the whole world. And then finally you can expand your love and compassion to include all beings and all living beings. So then this is the practice that's referred to in this second line.
심제 탐제 대화다 대외 교단 dem버주지 심제 탐제 동해도 동해 교단 저하지 심제 탐제 동해 매베 대화다 메려요 심제 탐제 니리 차단이들 땅을 내버 줄지세요라 어디 레레레 삼루타나 에네 탐제세 삼루야 야부 코토고요라 디메네고 심제 탐제 대화 심제 탐제 셴다주요지 심제 탐제 대화 동해도 나로레스나 콘도단사 콘도션 네버체 잠바다 저치요 마라 미레레레 때도 그 남주 착전 거라 되기도 선반 유런 로메도 남주 카리네테 콘도단사 콘도테 네버체서 네버체 직주마사 직주마되라 양간은 심제 탐제 심제 탐제 셴바즈 롱바치 아주 야 어때 레슨도 되기도 디엔데레레레 저와 요새데 꼼제 So
it's very important to understand this. This is an essential point that you're relating your love and compassion to those who to individual beings and taking them as the object of your love and compassion. Otherwise, if we're chanting the four immeasurables all the time, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness, may all beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering, may all beings be inseparable from happiness and have freedom from suffering, may all beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. We're chanting like that and just thinking of all living beings. If it doesn't have some kind of, if our practice of these four immeasurables doesn't have some kind of more immediate object, like those who are nearby, then the tendency is to think, oh, may all beings, and you're thinking, far away. Oh, they might as well be in some other country or some other, some distant part of the planet, and then those nearby you, if you, in that case, then if it seems like they're irritating you, then you'll get angry at them. If it seems like it would be better to have a fight, then you fight with them, and you say harmful things to them, and in the meanwhile, then you're praying for all beings to have happiness and freedom from suffering. So so there's a problem there. So it's essential then that you have this, cultivate these attitudes towards those who are nearby you.
Oh yeah.
Or who you feel close to, I think maybe is a better way to say.
Oh yeah. No, ko simje tamje si chamba so ko me denga namju ronji chese to le keban do to ba che go do tanda. Re samda na ni keban do ra. Na ju de samma dan chi dan do su da ba de shan ke pengi o mara. No de semni go ndo eto da re samda. Di chena ni pendo yo ra ti ni ngone ni mana shere me do to star che samda. So sa ko ngura.
If you cultivate love and compassion in this way, and towards those who are nearby and you feel close to, then gradually there'll come about a change that you have that you'll have some awareness of in your attitude towards those who are close by, and as opposed to if you're just thinking of all sentient beings and in a very diffuse way or hypothetical way, and it has no effect on your immediate relationship. So because it has this effect upon your immediate relationships, then you'll understand the benefit of doing this.
Oh yeah, da diwa chen me ke opusun so ba che su de dingi ku me ro cha ba nyu ji le so ba me da tong e tong ta me le so ba to ba che ba de yang ne yang de kom ba che de ra. Oh di dingi ji la ba di she do.
So we can understand cultivating virtue completely is the training in meditative stabilization. Meditative stabilization it could be on impermanence, emptiness, love, compassion, but it's based upon first hearing, study, reflection, and then taking it up and putting it into practice through meditation. So that line is that second line is about this training in this kind of training in meditative stabilization.
Oh yeah, rang sem de to ko les. Diwa chen me ke opusun so che rang sem ni also dul se do. Oh de shirap ji la ba se go ra. mitchua mida bata ani ko tunge de ro shi chen da o de ni ta me ba lo so ko de ko mi sigora ani chagdang ge nyomo lo so ba te so pa shin ro ne rang ge sem de be dul ru gra dang bo kon ro sa bu ne kon ro chung ro shedan sa bu de cha shin bu ne ko chagdang shin bu ne chagdang chung ro nafsim chen bu ne nafsim chung ro ye rang ge sem de ne ma ne shi ma de she ko dul ru yo ra di shirab ge samlo ta ne yani and samlo ta ne ko ya ri ro ko yo ra so rang sem ni on son de le su shirab ge la ba la te ne rang sem de wa che ko ba ti she do.
The third line is the training in wisdom, the third of the three trainings. So here wisdom can be understood to the wisdom that knows impermanence or knows the nature of cyclic existence as suffering, that knows emptiness and so forth. It's through this disciplining your mind means that you're reducing your attachment and hostility and your malice and covetousness. These when you practice wisdom, then the mind becomes disciplined. Disciplined here is referring to this reduction in the afflictions. You're reducing the afflictions through this cultivation of wisdom, or practicing wisdom.
Oh yeah, that mo karsura. Sudim ki labarwa. Oh, tene sudim ki labar sonde tage shala chawa pangbala soba. Tende kone sosa semyar dura, dura. Dejili ya chamba da ningjila soba tingji kom meda sho meda bala soba yang kom ne ko sem kyombo mebeche sem dura. Sem shiwa yar dura. Oh, ene tongbanyila soba damila soba komne. Chakdangda nyamoda nganjinda tezu kanga chorru yora. Ene rangi laba somgi nyamni chebala tene rangi sem yonsu biwa che kukure esungudwa. Odi sanje chumdendegi temba ki tenda tiri esin dina sanje temba inse. Sanje chumdendegi temba tila lungi temba tokwe temba nira. Lungi temba di sanje che somba di rangi teba che somba tayadira. Tokwe temba si odi naishe rangi chini kanga nyamni che yadiri diora. Odi tokwe temba lungi temba to tokwe temba zimbare sungudwa.
So in summary then, through the training in ethical discipline mentioned in the first line, and cultivating restraining ourselves from the 10 non-virtuous deeds, then the mind will become more disciplined, and then to cultivate virtue. The second line here, cultivating virtue completely through meditating on love and compassion and so forth. Then the mind becomes more disciplined, and we reduce our afflictions, and also through the practicing of wisdom, then the mind becomes more disciplined, and our afflictions grow, attachment and hostility and so forth are reduced. And so this is really to have a disciplined mind in this way, then is the teaching of the Buddha. That's the final line there. And the teaching of the Buddha can be understood in two parts. One part is the scriptural teaching, where we're studying and reflecting on the teaching, and then there's what's known as the realizational part, which is putting what we've heard and what we've studied and reflected, putting that into practice.
Shenla she chenye sheba de ya. Sanje ge sumbe tenyo sumge tenda de pa sheba da nyembala soba tende chebe ne lungu tempa zimbarwa. Tenzin cheba machi tangasi. Druba cheba kone, tokbe tempa zimbate kande resina. Tokbe tempa tsudimji laba, takinga zi miki chubungi tsudimla soba she. Di sheba na shi tu, nye, di na shi rangi tsudimchi nigi sona, miki chubungi tsudim sona, ketsulungi tsudim sona, kenyi tsudim sona. Di shena tokbe tempa zimbara. Di na shi tingi zingi. Komjaya ko rangi nye, tu rangi komjamna, tobe tempa zimbara. Di na shi shirab kuru mida dunga tongda me tarba topchigila soba, dendi yana chungila soba, tu nye lungu tempa zingi wara. Di na shi rangi samlutan yana yantu samlutan bina, tobe tempa zingi wara. Di yadu sanje ki tempa dan je, sanje ki tempa zing. Ni kante zingwa suni, tene sumla teba che. Sambache, chenyeche. Di tenda chinuke ranga nyamsulana, sanje tempa zimbara. Lungda tokbe tempa nigan zingi wara. Odisha.
So when we take up the so you have these two divisions of the teaching into the scriptural division and the scriptural teachings and the realizational teaching. So when we whether we hear or we can think of the teachings as being subsumed under the three collections: the collection of discourse. The collection of discipline, the collection of and the collection of sutra, and the collection of knowledge, and so then whenever we either study or teach, then in that way, if we're studying and teaching, for the scriptural teachings, if we when we study and reflect on them, and then teach them, and that's what's called as maintaining the scriptural teachings. Then, or upholding the scriptural teachings. If we study and practice and what do you say? Study and reflect, and then put the teachings into practice. Then that's known as upholding upholding the teaching, the realizational teachings. So then, whether we're studying and practicing any of the three collections, we study and reflect upon them. That's the scriptural teachings. And then we put those into practice, and that's the that's upholding. When we study and reflect upon them, we're upholding the scriptural teachings, and when we're studying and reflect upon them and put them into practice, that's upholding the what do you say? Based upon study and reflection, if we then put them into practice, then that's upholding the realizational teachings.
Beside. Oh yeah, I am better. Taking the Kokarsura. Oh, da. Temban Zingyung Pesum Sigua. Temban Zimba, Kyonga, Peloa Sigua.
Zimba.
Zimba, Kyonga, Peloa. Temba. Rangi Zimba, Rava, the Manyamba Chesu Koya. Any Shandala Pasha. Oh, the Luko, Tenesum, Kitanda. Teba samba kombache ani shendala pa shena ne sanje temba range zi shenle pa pe yora odi luko sunam tseme ba sa yora karesna sanje temba degi jigde simjen la pengi yora susu mesi ke la pengi yore chamba da zawa da sim shiwa cha yore ani de ne chiso shenda la ko pengi yora jidan jiden kam la pemba da dewe kyola du yora chawa pangore chamba kongore se tina shi chane mi pengi yora dewa pemba da dewe kyola du yora de sanje temba jiden kam la ne na penna sunam chamba sa yora o de ka sura Marazu tanda Sravasti kombata wina o kindu ki tetsu ro ani rabjung ma kelo ma tombala ani tsudum ki kornye tomba songdwa tin de zakon duet tamba songdwa zemdwa o tin na shi ko ani tin je komya da mida tungye tongda me ko ko da tsu ka ga ta gwar shekdwa ani nyengdwa long tamba zengi ora tene kom jaya dwa o tene tinga zengi la ba che tene sumga ga tanda ya chosam ko sum che ani kom kya niri niri mesna ta ba che do o ti de personam chemba sa ora ke ba sang bure de ora sanje tamba le pengi ora o ti de ni shen la ba che gi do che de mi mang bu ya shi del pengi ora chisol pengi ora o ti de ko tende ja de shi da ga lap chembore pengi chembore ke chembore nenga chembore o ti de ngara zo ene tene sum le tosam ko sum che rang sim le pemba che shen la pemba che ene shen la pemba che ba sa mai ba tabdu sangye je ko ba to be ba to pemba che de che do ne shi de be chen yang gi sam kong ne sem ba shu se na da de ba che ya mo do che so
No,
so
so then when we uphold the teaching and
Hold what?
when we uphold the teachings, when we preserve the teachings, and when we increase the teachings,
Like children is doing. Thank you, children.
Then what this has a great deal of merit in it, and how this comes about is that the teachings are just for the benefit of others, and when we so, for instance, in Sravasti Abbey, there are a number of people who have taken up the vows of a novice, and as well as bhikshu, bhikshini, and then practicing upholding the collection of discipline, observing the vows, and in this way, then what you're doing is you're upholding the teaching and preserving the teaching, and then increasing it by bringing it to others as well. And what happens is that you're benefiting both yourself and you're benefiting others. And then when others benefit, then the whole of our human society, the benefit spreads to throughout the whole of our human society. So then this is why we say that what we are doing, what you are doing collects is what do you say, very has a lot of merit. What do you say? Creates a lot of merit. So then if we then motivate ourselves thinking that I will listen to these teachings given, what do you say, written by Aryadeva, the explanation of the 400 stanzas on the middle way here. I'm doing this in order to not only bring a lot of benefit to all living beings, but to not only that in the short run, but in the long run, to bring all beings to full enlightenment, full awakening.
그래서 뭐야 당연히 되네 마셔신 저. 그래서 뭐야.
So then we'll start the text here.
다 계승가지고 디 페이지 어디 디 페이지 디서 니바 리뷰 챈담바나스 럽지 고바데로와. 전주 심바 nen주 주베 시게베 남셰 렉버시베 닝부시죠. 뭐 딱바 각바 콤바 템바데 럽두 치바 고벤제바 오시엠바. 오 디카시 투두치 셰르데 찾아라는 아주 좀 마소. 오 이러와. 오 디카스로 뭐 딱바 셰니 카드 드버스나 뭐 딱바 콤바 템바데 시기도아. 제가 아주 대뭐 딱바 치르바 도서 가지 시다 제서 정신 맞주바 주소. 오디 탐마들로 콤고래 콤자 땡기 요송고라. 콤메고바 퍼조데 가사스나니 딕사레 다 유쇼송고요 마. 다 흘려서 되어서 고소다. 저렇게 제가 말해서 콜바 야무지. 대신에 제가 콤바템 받아서 계신보라. 제가 가서 가르쳐 그랬으나 주된 참여요 말에 애네 주된 딱봐요 말이랑 오늘 주봐요 말했어요라. 그 대진도 그 가르쳐 그래. 잠불린 치네 진직된데 간데스 차게 와래서. 애네 난게 강사 다데 간데스 제제 용기 와래서 되고 시작이와라. 제가 지금 다 딱봐래 거기에 형고 말에 딱보네 규den ko mare sigara zambuli chaya de ko juk ke shanda ke ko mara tangbu takba siore tyuden chamere tele ten ani yongi ore sigara kashe ki chizo takba tele ten yongi ore sigara o di mare sigara takba tak kasilai bangazo konzo takba de ngele gyujik tangbu gyujo dire tita la mago ge sha ko do tene tita la gyu koreshe te semle charto me do 그래서 그 딱바치샤 뒤따로 규고 말아 되게 강가 소개를 시기와라 전낭바티 말해서 그 규질에 규지고르마도 그 유라르 제제 할게 그러마도 그 딱바치 대샤는 코아키 두비네 딱바르 시기라고 그디네 기라 야나 남이 할게 말아 그래서 그 유라치는 껍질 마게기 내가 시험도 도와시기도 와. 저 규미다 과거에서 티시에도 알레디지샤더니. 망다네.
So that, I wanted to refer back to the very end of the chapter here, chapter 9. We didn't get a chance to really explain. It says that this is the 9th chapter from the 400 of the yogic deeds, 400 on the yogic deeds, showing how to meditate on the refutation of permanent functional phenomena. Here, the operative word is how to meditate. It's not that. We don't, after finishing the 9th chapter on permanent functional phenomena and understanding about how many non-Buddhist tenets present ideas to explain how the self arises and how the universe arises, and then refute those ideas, and then say, oh, well, we put them in their place. Now we're all set, and we can just move on to the next chapter. It's not for that purpose. We're actually trying to understand something about how the self arises, how the universe arises. So there's some understanding there that we have to. Deepen, and so then when you have the explanation of the non-Buddhists, that what happens is that what we're seeing is is that they're explaining things as arising from some kind of a beginning, and the beginning then has to be some kind of a permanent, unchanging cause that gives rise to everything else after that. And so basically they're avoiding any kind of explanation of what's going on before this, prior to this permanent cause or permanent origin of everything, however you want to think of it. It could be the principle or the general principle, or a divine creator, and so forth. There are many different explanations of that cause. But when the Buddhists then say, well, they look at that and say, well, that cause is not going to, if you have a permanent cause, it's either going to constantly produce the same thing, or never produce anything. So then there has to be some kind of a transformative cause there has to be like a causal process, I guess we'd say, where sometimes things are arising and sometimes they don't. And so then the Buddhists present a different approach.
This way. Oh yeah, oh no. No, the Indo Kasura. That in the train talk about it. Oh, the Regi Chabamar, the train Sony, Kasmazulaimba, Nambatong Bakalia, any lung chair, lungi kalia, color lung dance, then tree Jingosha, lung yunera, oh, then such a cha. Then draw, stand down mid to Sukangaya, Kira, Dylan draw dance, Jera. When it take condition Gorisana, Nambatong Bachikiliako, then they tear the Simjaki leg on Grace, leg on Grace. There, Deco, Zamlindi, Chayan, Kudan King, Joan to Zamamboji, Legache, and the Chi Nurkin Chagiora, Midabare, Gundurache, Mambush and Gurache, and the Devil Gurache. Sishin Naxelos of Kangati and Gora. The end of Midaba Shadua. Good can attend the Angurachin Kekure Kanga. Or Midaba Indico, Tension Revenue Indico, and a time that was Tombani Serb. There's a Kanga ko Kumko Yora, Hako Yora, to take Takwaran to Bayomare. In a 10 attack was some detention revenue on some day. Nukin Jitensha Yungorese. Tinashita was a nugget tended to 다데 통에 말이구나 니반도치 길래서 된대야나 주니고는 아주 과코스 시행도와 그거 주다 깨나 댄진 레버리 중앙에서 댄진 레버리 중앙에 되니 그 코안되지니고 동해랑 신체래서라 이니 주다 깨게 왕게체 레드 님몽게 라와메 바통에 용거 바치니나 네 랑원에 좀 랑원도 좀 영향요 말해서 동반이 시행도와 기치를 메달에 동해에 담이 송세쇼래 남들나리아 어디인데고 어딘데 삼루다네 뇌진직된 메다바 고메 뇌진직된 테니까서래 랑원도 좀 매바 고메야 다가내시 딜라 롱주바베 심제 뇌진직된 심제게 레게 온 거라 애니 심제도 켄텔 롱제게오라 롱주바베 심제데 메다바 Rawandu to a member. Don't buy so to come go vacation. Oh, teach you.
When it's talking about meditating, it's talking about then once you eliminate this these other views, then you have to increase your knowledge of the Buddha's explanation. And so then the Buddhist explanation is that you have this, based upon the karma of all the living beings that are going to inhabit the universe, there's this empty, sort of an empty, we'll just call it empty space, and then based upon that, there's the wind energy arises, and then the what do you say, the element of water and the element of earth. And then once you have the element of earth, then all the environment and the beings within that environment, they all come into existence. And what this is pointing out is a constant process of cause and effect. There's a constant unfolding of causality and getting more and more complex. And so then through reflecting on the explanation of, for instance, the explanation of the 12 factors of dependent arising, then we can understand how beings come into existence and then have to undergo a great deal in a constant dependent arising of cause and effect, and maybe we can call it an unfolding of cause and effect, and then they have to undergo in that process, because of this self-grasping, then the afflictions arise, and we have to undergo beings undergo suffering, and so through reflection on this dependent arising and in this whole process of momentary, of cause and effect, then what you have is the momentariness or impermanence that is just this momentariness of impermanence, and so then through reflecting on these principles of momentariness, impermanence, and suffering, and also then we come to understand selflessness and emptiness, and so in this way, then through thinking in this way, then this is how we can increase our understanding of through looking over this, through studying this kind of chapter.
Oh yeah, 당연히 인다 rabji chubaterwa. 다 각바 공부했다.
And then, so in this way, then we can meditate. That's what.
Oh yeah, this way. Yeah. 다 rabji chubatin 방니. 다 각바 공부했다 바데레도와. 다디 니바 딘줍소 소소 각바세기도. 뭐보 딘줍소 소소 각바세 니바세 니디 rabji kuban 공고대 야요라. 네. 된생아도 된담베 템바 개버셰발라 숨세. 마르 데레 땅의 질 각바스도 땅의 각베 코네 딘룹 질 각바스 뭐보 딘룹 소소 각바스 기도 sabche ni ba rabji kuba ke tangbu de sabche
ne sabche
o de dang o 딘룹 소소 각바스 해야 되다
ne 소소 각바 ne share 각바
de do ya ni ba diso ngo 딘룹 소소 각바들이야 다 된생에 코네 셰기도 전쟁에 권에 센터 전쟁 당부대 가르셰도 세나 노 전에 디레 당부려서 뭐다 소소를 갖고 왔어도 다디 소소를 갖고 질 갖고 왔어 근데 다음에 제발라시 숨르시도 와티 셰모가샤 다 당부 다 소소를 갖고 왔대다 될이야 야야와 망부시도 와 지라베 다 갖고 와 정전베 다 갖고 와 이렇게 다 갖고 와 다기 연대소 지tem바세 신도가 되는데다 당부들다 반세만 용구라 네 당부 지라베 다 각발라 니세 다기 뭐 각바 줍지 각바 신이도와 다 다기 뭐데 각이 어다 지라베 되베 다기 뭐데 각바들다 당부가죠 셰야데 딜랍다 지라베 되베 다기 뭐데 각이 어레스
So here, we're in chapter 10. We're going to be looking at the individual refutation of truly existent.
What page is it? You look in the outline?
I'm looking at the outline now on 320 if you want, but it's also on the other one here, I think so. That's probably. Anyway, it's easier to look at the one in the back because it's closer to the Tibetan. So on page 320. And it says, individual refutation of truly existent functional phenomena, refuting the self. And so the individual refutation, so this is divided into three different parts. You have the individual refutation of this, refutations of the self, and you have the general refutation. And finally, the third section, we'll get to the sections, but here we're starting with this individual refutation of the self, and there are various individual refutations. There's 4 A, B, C, D, 4 of them. And so then, but we'll be starting with this first one, the refuting the Vaishashika self, the Vaishashika, who we know from the previous chapter. And then that is also divided into a few sections here too, I think. And the first section is called refuting the nature of the self, and so then that first one is called the actual meaning of what it really means to refute the nature of the self starts with this verse 226. Wow.
Yeah. Ta chitrabe ta ke ngo de ka ge or da tunda. Oh, tambo ta ge ngo ka ba de. Re te kan de dos ne tambo ngo ni. Ke de ta ji cha wa ga shi rang ge ngo ye na su do. Ta sing ge rang ge ngo ye tu ba shi ye na. ene nyangele debe tuna de ma thongwe chebe jigbe sherese no tene nyangde toba de sena ene ta rangune truba de ma thongwe ene ta meba chandugi sam jigbe sherese gora jigdemba ni la yese jigdemba lia kanga ta da tini shen da longje la soba kanga yo res gora o di yakbu de ma do tarba top sona ene ta korang ngo meba cha ene chi pungbu meba cha kage meba re do na de mindu sta laurwa sheso zo gyurwa shina ta range ngo yoba mai de sa o de ta range ngo truba de yoba ma res gora chira pala phasik do ta range ngo truba yona te keba peme ta manishi do gyurna te merik besheros ta range ngo truba ta de keba re ta peme re ta mani re ta kare takje chenati shatugu ma res gdo o te kande resna mudi chenam ta ni su kelen des mudi chen chira ba de soge ta de ni kelen gde sere ta de ya ni gares na ge da da chi ta ni ore se ora deso di
ore
inji de no ya di de ta o ya le jene kar sore le je na ge da de kares ne luigi kongna neshi ongbe so yulen jugbar cheba nange chebe kibu ngansingi yudu kyobasigara tene luigi nange dada garisen luigi nalo le yore sigara luigi nalo le yore luigi kongna neshi ongbe so yulen jugbar chebas migi ta chugre amjo nyen chugre ndrogure sindro chugre kanga lega le kon gendero asigara wongbo dang chik taye dang toye dang roye dang teye kanga che chugura yulen jugbari cheba nange chebe kibu nganzingi nange chebe kibu nanglol denge pungbi nanglol denge ene wongbo so yulen jugbala soba kanga chengengi roa ene kibu nga samsa nganzingi yudi nange chebe kibu tila mini nga samgi ore sigara yudu kyurwa os odi chilam nale Kondebade.
No.
Yeah.
So, it begins, the commentary then begins by saying, if this so-called self existed, if we read the commentary, by way of its own entity, maybe we could reword that as, if this sounds clearer to you, exists, if the so-called self existed as its own entity, it should be seen in the state of nirvana. It should, fearing its discontinuation because it is not seen during nirvana, they say the conventional is preferable and so forth. That there's a when they say that the conventional say for is preferable, then this is because worldly people feel that way. Because jiten ni lasana, jiten ba din ni la.
Jiten ba dini la yes. Jiten ba ke tanya de lela buto te de sigora. Ta yorin ro yor deba yor chikanga yora. Tarva topsona ka ke menge chagdo asigora.
Because susige de mutekba.
Mudik ba sigdo.
So then the non-Buddhists are the ones who are saying that the conventional seems preferable. The person exists, chairs exist, food exists, the world exists. But when you reach nirvana, then everything ceases to exist. It seems to us that then it would be preferable to the conventional would be preferable, and so they have no use for the ultimate. Okay, so however, so then the commentaries goes on to say, however, the self does not exist as its own entity, for if it did, it should be male, female, or neuter, but that is inappropriate. Here we'll just go into what the non-Buddhists do feel. Here the non-Buddhists are referred to, or we usually translate it as the non-Buddhist philosophers, but here the translator uses the word forders, like fording a stream. So the forders assert two selves, an inner self and an outer self. The first is inside the body, and this inner agent, which makes the various sense organs engage with objects, is the focus of the conception I. So then it's this inner self that then experiences, is a explanation of hearing, thinking, hearing, smelling, seeing, and so forth. All the senses, and then this having this sense of I. That's all the inner self. The outer self is a combination of the body and the senses, which assists the first.
Ta rangi ngoyo yoba mind this rangu pa sigdoa. Ta rangi ngoyo yoba mind this. And it gave you like Eva Pameta Manishi don't you na Miri Besher Mudichan Namdi Ta Ni Kellen this. Mudichan so Ta Ni Kellen Gresigdoa. 어 난게다다 치다스 니요라. 네 당분이
담분이 did.
외디 공나 내신 왕배초 유는 죽버리 제바 난게 제베 기분 간진디 유도 교바서도. 류디 나로를 요레스고라. 네 왕배초 유리야 죽버리 챙겐게 난게 제베 기부 간진기 유도 나가 삼매게 유도 교베 다들에스고라. 니바데 가레스네 류당 왕분 류벤 치다데 류당 메게 왕분 나용부터 소대가 telesigores고라. 니바 류당 왕분 류벤 오제 난게 달라 팬도바 시세로스. 난게 달라야 팬도를 치다되게. 치다데 왕보다 류순 류바 뱀부터스고다. 소부들이야. 생계스르스고다. 류당 왕분 류바.
The bed. So then, so it's this inner self that then is sort of engaging us in the senses, and then this engages us in this thinking of I. From the viewpoint of the Buddhists, then there isn't any kind of what do you say? Self that exists as its own entity, but here the non-Buddhists, the Forders, are putting forth a self that does exist as its own entity, and so they explain these two selves, and the inner self is engaging us in the senses, in the five senses, and this thought about self or I, and then the exterior self supports that. It's really the external, like our own what do you say, sense, the faculties themselves, and the body, and so it provides a support to the or help to the that inner self.
제초다. 야. 다랑루파 딘디가 말했어도. 난게 다 ngoñi 여바 멤버 타서도. 난게 다세에 랑신지 여바 말했어도. 그래서 대단한 뱀에장 겨와셴도야 뱀에 권한 주나서. 이미 난게 다스네 뱀에게 난게 다데 되네 뱀에를 봐서거라. 에이나 그 랑신지 뱀에이나 난게 다데 치 속불 뛰게 하마라. 룰이 뛰게 하마라. 근데 겨와셴도야 뱀에 권한 주나서. 겨와지마니 뱀에게 난게 다데 뱀에를 그러와서거라. 처음에티 되게 도와서 권을 주나 처음에 배쳐서도 겨wan들 뱀에이네 제마 깨바기 그래 겨wan들 깨바이나 제마 뱀에 끼그라. kun yundugura peme janjaki kiba janjaki marwa no chawar mig be chirdanse peme la soba tage yonde duma mebe chiros kyo chima de chindo ina sendi peme ina kyo chima kiba de chikesuna peme la soba tage yonde duma mebe chiros peme ki yonde to sindegi mare segara kyo chima lo dembenge ba yomara Tena nange chebe kibu ngoni yueba member tals. Pinje sonza nange chebe kibu de rangshin jituba yung mare se kare.
So the Buddhists kind of refute this idea. As follows. It follows that when I say kind of, I mean just they do refute this idea in the following way. I was looking for a certain word, but they refute this idea in the following way. It follows that the inner self does not exist by way of its own entity. It does not exist as its own entity. Maybe we can say I prefer that. But so if something does exist as its own entity, then that means we're talking about the inner self. if you say it exists as its own entity, then it would have no connection to the exterior. So it would be female regardless of how how the body is. That's the idea. So if it did exist as its own entity, it should in future lives too only ever be a woman, and
Great. That's wonderful.
yet
Thank you very
change
much.
yet change is observed. It is observed that that femaleness and so forth are also not attributes of the self, and it's because from one life to another, you can be born as a woman for a number of lifetimes and a man and so forth, and you can go through many, what do you say, changes of gender.
뭐 나도 나갈 수도 있으나 남게 다지데 치다시니 치기어라 치다데다 뱀부레데도 류도 공부 쳐버스기도 그래서 소부야 소데데 치다시기도 남게 다세데요 소부 매비시 나를 유스기어라 아니 남게 다들이야 치다라 코께버서 뱀메세게 남샤 유쇼그라 나를 지 유대요네 데네 깨버다 뱀메기 남샤샤나 코 뱀메 인세나 니 랑신기 뱀메 랑윈에 주베 랑신기 뱀메 딱바 임베치요나 깨와체마데 코 뱀메 인고 그랬어라 아니 깨바지나 깨와체마데 깨바 인고 그랬어라 디텐데 요 말은 요 말에 깨바 뱀메 교르 뱀메 깨바 교르 그랬어라 어디 인도케라 난게다데 뭐 랑윈에 주바 딱바 임베tin데 쉬어 되게 말했어 어디에나 코 깨와체마 깨바데 깨바 뱀메 뱀메 되고 그러스 디데메 도와신 교도 도와스
We can understand this through that what's being refuted is the internal self, the inner self. This outer self, of course, it can be either male or female because it's talking about the external physical body. Okay, but then they're saying that this inner self, which is not at all like physical, is female or male, and so then that's where the problem comes in, because through from one life to the next, there's no certainty that being female in this lifetime, you're going to be female in your next lifetime. It's like it could be male or not, and being male in this lifetime, there's no certainty that you're going to be male in your next lifetime. And so that's uncertain. So then, so these are not qualities of the inner self.
This one. Oh, then you do. Meshita Geshe. Dana do something. Oh, Pemila so but dog you dead one maybe just Joachima send the permit Joachima Keba Chagre, send the Keba de Joachima permit Chagre Tinako Joachima delico, send the Yovana Shingi, Keba the permit and then to Yoma Resigora, maybe Cherosigua. Dena Nange Chebe Kibung only Yova member Talase, Kanget Sena. Kanse nangda peme minsigdo ke minsi keba mares mani mares tese mishim bashile kyoda po nyamdo semsigdo kange se kanse sedro nange ta peme ragi mare keba ragi mares gora nange ta de ludan rawa yo marwa pekagarwa mo kanse nange ta peme mayin pemegi nangda de peme mare kebe nangda de keba mare sigora maishe keba mahila se nangda de peme nangda de keba rig mare ene peme rig mare sigora mani ham rig mare sigora keba da peme kaya mainge rig mare se de se meshe ba timun bashi le se o meshe ba timun bashi meshe be wan kona le kyo da po nyam do lomshe Tagdala Trudun Zimbada, Trondosos. Nanga Tala meaning Ngao Nyamdu Tigres, so Gansing Uriserva. And I gave a ye, not Bemi, some design, Nanga Tala meaning, and I gave a ye, Pemi, some Giorasa. Oh, did any channel Lomba some remado, Nanga Tala gave a Pemekaya Rigmado. Powder Latuna, she is Giora. Oh, yeah.
So then the the conclusion is that the this internal agential, maybe we can think the agential is a word. I don't know if it's often used, but agential means it's an agent. This internal self, this inner self, is an agent. Okay, so we can call this the agential self or something like that. She uses the word. The translator here uses the word agential. So then that agential self is it is necessarily not existing by way of its existing, as she says, by way of its own entity or as its own entity. And so then if we then read the verse, it says, when the inner self is not female, male, or neuter, it is only out of ignorance that you think your own self male.
You're ignorant.
Yeah. Thus it follows that the inner agential self does not exist as its own entity. For when the inner self is neither female, male, or neuter, it is just out of ignorant confusion that you imagine that your own self male. It is a fabrication, like mistaking a mottled rope for a snake. So the idea is here that the inner self is where, we're not talking about the outer self, but we're just thinking that the inner self is explained as that which thinks I. So when the inner self is having this thought of I am a man, I am a woman, then that's just ignorant confusion. It's just a made-up kind of fantasy. So it's a fabrication, like mistaking a mottled rope for a snake.
So this one. Yeah, talk about don't less go. The caresidu nangi dala mini any ta geba o peme ho nyambade tawala trudu lomba nashi lomba remado geba peme kan rigma resigora. O din dole ya pesha sungdo. Dogben dushi kini tu langba tu de kongdo sonwa meja gyawar gyursigdo. Mi kashe togba sa chisa o dadi kena tu redasana o dange tu se son samjeko tu da mare de kora samlo togben dushi kini tu langba sierwa. O danga nagdu seje kobe gyendre tinde yore sigor ko semgi. Tu ngune mena danga tu se son se danga sem gyendre go sigara. Tu de kongdo sonwa meja gyawar gyurse. O dega nashi eni chiraba tazuge ta da tagi se nangi ta da chi ta kelembade o tagwarangune trubatinde chi kelembade kun dushi logba res meba chi yaban zingi ore sungara.
Det tama gör va? Jag kan ni och chage driver va? So then here there's an explanation. So that it's saying that it's just out of ignorant confusion. So here there's an illustration of what ignorant confusion does, and a sutra says, an attitude of doubt foments poison, and though it has not entered one, one faints. The idea is that you have this idea, this concept that arises in your mind that what you just drank was poison, and whether it's poison or not. And then just from thinking, wow, it's poison, then you faint like that. Then, so that's the same idea as mistaking a mottled rope for a snake. The power of that ignorant confusion. So then if you the last two lines of this verse in sutra are not mentioned here, but it goes on to say that our thinking, our accepting that the I and the mind, then these are just it's a kind of misconception, and we've produced something that's not real. It's a misconception, I guess we could, or mistaken conception.
Nibati len kagdwa. Nibati len kagdwa karesne. Tagi ngo kag barba. Ka sadu santa del ko su len jikemiti ba kagbachigora. Nibati len kagba se. Keba dan peme soni chi tagi ta yin la se. Ko se keba da peme se de chi ta de ta re se gora. Dedan drewale nangi ta keba so chi junga chenbu shi keba tene dedan drewale ne nangi ta dedan drewale nangi ta le ya keba da peme mani so ki namsha shagre se gora. Ta tele rang lu phan de ma re se. Ene chi junga chenbu shi liya chi junga den junga ne shi chi ta den junga ne shi re so lu dang wang bu chok be su de le se gora. De ne keba de le ya keba da peme da mani so ki taadu yoba tegi ma resi gora. Junga chenbu shi keba so yang taadu tebar taas. Ni junga chenbu shi dezu kanga de keba da peme da mani si la soba tenda yimbar tar si gora. Teda na ngobo tembar truba la keba so gyur mendyu je kebar me beese. Ngobo tembar truba la ya junga chiktene rangu ne trube keba yena ni junga kanga rangu ne trube keba yengu resi gora keba yengu resi gora ranga du trube telko tike shanla te me ko ne ko gyurgu yena ni kanga chin junga chi keba yena kanga keba re chin junga chi peme yena kanga peme re du resi gora keba so jan ta do tebar ta te dana ngobo tembar truba la keba so sun gyurmen gyu je kebar mebe junga tamje kebar gyuru na se Diwo dili tindo tsudu lo shene kanzin junga tamje la pomo mani yue me ba. Tese chi de teda ni tene pomo mani yin se. Wode ta dama di lo shene ale.
So we have a kind of rejoinder from the non-Buddhist. We're talking about Vaisheshikas here, but in general it's talking about them as being forders. Here, male gender, female gender, and so forth are marks of the outer self. Through its connection with this, the inner self is male and so forth. That's how they come back at them, saying because the outer self is the body, and it's connected to the inner self. So then we say it's male, female. It follows that because of then the Buddhist response to this is that it follows that because of their connection with the outer self, the four great external elements, earth, water, fire, wind, all of these would also be a male self or a female self and so forth. If that were so, all the elements would be the person. Since for truly existent functional thing there can be no differences between what is and what is not male and so forth. So once we're talking about something that's truly existent, then then everything would be male or everything would be female.
Yeah, that's our Kangzi Junga Tamjela Sido. Pomo Mani Yumava. Chi Jungalia, Poda Moda Mani Sea Yungma Resigora. Sajumilum Junga Desul Sigora. Nichi de Tese, Teda Ni, Tene Pomo Mani Hise. Chi Dili Mena Sura Kangzi Junga Tamjela Pomo Mani Yuba member Tese Sigdoa. Chi Dese, Tese, Chi Dese. Chi da Junga Teda Ni Latene. Nangi da Pomo Mani Miridis. Chi da la tene, and then Nangi da la Poshago, Moshago said Namsha de Rigimedosiana. Garasni Chi das we can Juan de Zulsigda, Juan de Zula Pomumanizia Yomaresiora. No, Tedana, Dilia Pomumanizia Yona, any Tedana Nurbula Sobe Kamnea, gave us some Migbatarus. Tambu de gave the Pemeki Kudan Duni, any Nurbusigra, Corco was a Pange. Michagorwa. Tambu de Kudan Rebecca de la gave the payment the money say your best Namshashagure to take my resigara. Oh, did you?
The verse then states, when all the elements are not male, female, or neuter, how is it that how is that which depends on them male, female, or neuter? So the explanation of the verse from the commentary says, when all the elements do not have male, female, or neuter gender, as we just discussed earlier, that the earth, water, fire, and wind, these wind energy, if you prefer, that all of these are how could they possibly be male or have male, female, or neuter?
I could not hear that last sentence. So we discussed earlier.
As we discussed earlier, I'm going to repeat that. As we discussed earlier, that the elements, the four elements, earth, water, fire, wind energy, all of those cannot be male, female, or neuter. So then, when all the elements do not have male, female, or neuter gender, then how can the inner self, which relies on the outer self, those elements, okay, the outer self being those elements, then feasibly be male, female, or neuter? It cannot. If all the elements were male, female, or neuter, it would follow that even the early stages of the fetus, maleness and so forth, should be observable, and so in the very earliest stages of the embryo forming, then you should be able to tell whether it's a boy or a girl. Or not, either.
This one. Also. Dane Kirala Chigbarabasiora. Anything no Norubula Sobotezu Tahim, but Kirala Keba the Pemiganam Shashagdoa. Sumbakan Juguru Sangalit and the Juguma Resora. Killa Yabatavan Gurushana Koja, Juan Ranshi Mebalatene, Dogbe Yaba Medose. Juan de Ranshin Jituba Yomare, Ta Ranshin Jituba Yomare. Chi Junga ge Rangshin Tuba Mebe, Chi Sobo ge Talatene, and then Dikebaren Dipemere Sheko. Then talk about some shagri, I look at your marisagora.
So the same error is entailed for you. The Forders come back with that same, with that kind of a response, and then the answer of the Buddha said, since we impute gender independence upon elements which lack inherent existence, there is no error.
This one, oh yeah.
That they're mere imputations, mere, what did it say, how do we say that? Nominal designations or something like that. Mere designations, I think. Dependent designations, or dependent imputations.
Yeah, this one. No, so that's somebody shenji diridwa. Somebody shenji tala ming jang ngao nyambe lo kewa rigba talwa se diridwa. Sholka somebody dirwa. Shenji tala ming jang ngao nyamdo. Lokewa talgi doswara. Hejin Joshua dala meaning ngao nyambe lokewa talgi doswara. Oh, the condition sumba shenji dala meaning ngao nyambe lokewa ribatawani. Kansagi ta rangi ngoni ji majuba talswara. Kansagi ta de rangi ngoni ji any ngada da kansa chugu mare sungara. Majuba tals. De jona hejin ji tala Chujingi migbe senaya, de la ngao nyambe lo bala, de mebe echerse. Oh, Kansaki da rangi ngoni jituba ina, pena lejingi da bude nga se, da se de rangi ngoni ji rangshin jituba, tinte da chiyoba ina sikiwara. Ene chujingi lejing la mini, lejingi da la mini, ngao 다고 냠베 로케고 그래서라. 네. 어디게 면도하시거라. 대진게 달라 주진게 미베세나야. 될라 나오 냠베 로케고 발레 데메게 회셔서거라. 디질라달래.
네. The next verse 228 is in the outline is explained to be talking about the unwanted conclusion that generating the thought I when observing another's self is reasonable. So it's talking about just if Devadatta, for instance, saw Joshua coming towards him, then he would think I. Like that, with reference to Joshua. So then it follows that the personal self is, the commentary is as follows. It follows that the personal self is not established by way of its, is not established as its own entity. If it were, just as the thought blue arises universally in relationship to blue, the thought I should arise in yagya. This is hard to pronounce. Yagya, I think. Yagya, I think. Yagya, when he observes Devadatta's body, but it does not. So if somehow the I is, exists by way of it as its own entity, then even when Yagya looks at Devadatta, he should think I.
Kyoje tsawadire, kyoje taga nge ta minsikdo, te ta me mange shirse. Kyoje ta kanyi bada nge ta ma resi wara. Tenas ora kyoji daga ngedame des, tenas. Kyoji nganzingi yu, te tami mangishese. Kyoji nganzingi yu des, nga samsang, nge san ngarang tala mene nga samgayora. Yu des, rangi ngoyo ta mayimba so, rangi ngoyo chube nga mayimbar tala sigayora. Ta samsang ina, nga samsang ina, nga kipena ta, nga samsang ke, nganzingi ke, ene karsa yu desura. Desa. Kyoji ta kayimba te sigayora, Josho ta kayimba te, nge ta mayimba te na se, nge ta rigi ma re sigayora. Kyoji nganzingi yu te se, nge nganzingi yu, ngam ta se samya te sigayora. Yu te rangi ngoyo ta rigi ma re sigayora. Rangi ngoyo chube ta ma re, rangi ngoyo chube nga ma re sigayora. Rangi ngoyo chube ta da, rangi ngoyo chube nga ina, ni ko chaji nganzingi yu ta, ta to chakbe yu to mangi bishir. Ene Josho ya ta de, rangi ngoyo chube ta da nga ina, ene nge, ko chage, nga ke, ko chage nganzingi yu ta, ta to chakbe yu to mangi nge ke, Josho alimi ne, nga, ta samsa, nga yi samsa, tindreki lo kikiri, ti kikimi duwa sigora. O, ti karasana, ngombo la tumu to ngombo lo kiwashina. Ngombo tila sutena, ngombo nyambe lo kikira. Ane nga sayade ko, nga sayade rangune yoba hina, ane sutena, o, nga sam, Josho ke nga limini nga o nyambe lo kikukiri sigora. Ti kikima re sigora. Ni nga zo pechiya yunguwa lamrina, parila, pajo kiri, sujo kiri, pari suri ora. De denge degi ripigi pari sigira. Pige denge degi kora suri sigira, nga zo yosidor pari sigira. Janko pari siyaji, ngongi ji tubachi yuna, pige denge zoge nga zo ridi pari yin samgora. Ti samgi menduwa sigira. Oti nashi taa siyadi ko, soso lo pa taa shagira. Nga samgira, nga samgira. Josho kira nga samgira. Lo tabari mato ngone nga singi rangone chuba, rangshinji chuba chiyana, Josho nge pa tatu nga samsa changure sigora. Ngombo lo tatu san sutenti ngombo re samgito wati na shi re sigora. O ti sanza ko rangone yo mara, soso lo, soso pa tagi ora. Pari suri na shi re. Tata shiya sayati tutu kire mato. O ti sigora.
The Tibetan is arranged in a slightly different way. So it says, when we read the verse, the first two lines of the verse then read, yourself is not myself, and thus there is no such self, since it is not ascertained. So the explanation of that first two lines then would be, since that which is yourself is not my own self, it follows that the object of your conception of I is not a self existing by way of its own entity, because it is not ascertained as the object of my conception of self, of I, or my attachment to the self. So here the idea is well, explained in the next two lines, where it says, does the conception not arise in relation to impermanent things? This is expressed in the idea of like the far mountain and then the near mountain. If we're standing on one side of the valley and looking towards the mountain, that's the far mountain. Now, if that far mountain existed as its own entity, then a person standing on that far mountain would think, oh, here we are on the far mountain. But they don't think like that. They think, just like we are when we're on this side of the valley, we think we're standing on the near mountain. Over there, they think we're standing on the near mountain, and the mountain that I'm standing on is the far mountain. So what that is pointing out is that that these ideas are mere mental imputation or imputations of the mind, right? That they're it's relational and or relative is another way of saying it. And so the last two lines of the commentaries, or the last part of the commentary says, therefore, doesn't the thought I arise in relation to impermanent things called form and so forth? The self is only imputed. It's imputed. It's what do you say? A dependent designation. I'm having trouble recalling that translation. Oh, this is also, huh?
No, Cavalesson,
Over 3 minutes if you want.
Più sai,
Do you want to stop? It's 1:33.
più so giorno.
Oh wait, yeah, no, I'm
Sawa
getting
da,
decided.
ngobo mi da pan nam la sigdo. Tokba jewan jurme nam siti ba la shana. Tena ngobo mi da ba yana yuksho ta de shasha. Digre tondu lamne di to slab ko edwa. No de shan sholo sigan tangbo ni di sar.
I think I maybe got a little ahead. So then we'll sort of pick up with the second part of that. We'll pick up in that same verse. What was that? Verse 228? Yeah, 228. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah.